In the cozy heart of North Carolina, as Christmas bells ring their tune, Triad families decorate and dream of a home they hope to buy soon. They are tired of paying rent, but have been too scared by the news. Less homes for sale and higher interest rates gave everyone the blues. But as we go into the new year, there's an opportunity for joy, as a new home in 2024 is on Santa's wish list for every girl and boy. Rates are lower and homes are selling. The Triad is quite hot. The Sharpe Mortgage team will talk to you with great care and thought. Even if you are not ready today to take the next step in your life, we know that life can change quickly for a husband and wife. There is no obligation to talk to our local team about your dreams. No stress at this time of year. It's as easy as it seems. Celebrate Christmas knowing you are well on your way to build beautiful traditions and magic for future holidays. The Sharpe Mortgage team raises a toast to your family's festive cheer, whether you're ready now to buy or waiting till next year. A house truly becomes a home when filled with love and holiday songs. Christmas 2024 in your new home is where happy holiday hearts belong.
This is the Triad Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, happy holidays, and thanks for listening to another episode here on the Triad Podcast Network as we're visiting with our real estate expert to talk about the close of 2023 and a little bit about what to expect in 2024 as it relates to our local housing market. Blake Ginther is our guy with the Ginther Group right here in the Triad in Winston-Salem. Blake, I want to begin with this. As we're in the holiday season, you've got a beautiful family, two little kiddos. Maybe not so little anymore. at least one of them.
Yeah.
What is your and your family's favorite local holiday tradition?
So, I think it's a bit of a cheesy cop-out answer because I think it's probably going to see the lights, which I think judging by the amount of line that Tanglewood has, that might be a lot of people's. It's the one that we've been consistent. So when you say tradition, like I think, well, what do we consistently do other than picking out a real tree, which we'll get to this later, but inflation clearly did hit the tree market. I don't know if anybody else felt that, but I did.
Yeah.
I actually audibly laughed aloud when I saw the price tags of the trees. It was, but other than getting the tree and putting it up, Sunday, Thanksgiving weekend, and then going and seeing the lights. I think the only other thing we do is we typically, and I have not involved the kids up until I think this year, where we get wish lists from underprivileged kids at elementary schools in Winston, and get and help fulfill the wishes. That's what we do from my team's been doing that, but I'm getting the kids involved this year.
That's great. That's really good. Yeah. Try to check off some Christmas lists for kids whose families may not have the means to be able to do that. So kudos to you and your team and your family for doing that. As far as the Christmas trees go, it is one of the few times when I am thankful for only having 8-foot ceilings in our living room where we put the tree.
So, man, I got to tell you, you saved some serious money this year because those trees went up in price.
Yeah. We still spent a pretty penny. We get a real one as well. And it was not cheap. But the fact that we only typically get about a 6-foot tree at the tallest, that helps. That helps a little bit.
We got a 9-foot tree this year. I think last year we got a maybe a little more than 9. Maybe it was I don't think it was 10, but it was tall. It was taller than this year, and it was this year's tree was 30% more expensive. I was like, yeah. So inflation's hit the tree market.
Yep, inflation has hit just about every market, and trees are not immune to it. All right, in terms of real estate, Blake, we were chatting a little bit before we hit the record button. But there's been some news federally, and there's been some articles written about some projections for next year, and both have an impact in terms of what we might see going into 2024 in terms of real estate. So let's start with what we found out related to where interest rates are going to be headed or not headed.
Yeah, I mean, it's talk about a good segue, right? We're talking about the inflation of trees. Well, in fairness, that was a month ago, I guess, or 3 weeks ago, and the Fed just said they feel confident enough with where inflation is heading that they are not going to be raising rates any longer, and that they're most likely going to be lowering them, albeit, I think, slowly and minimally the next several quarters. So, I think that what does that mean to as it pertains to real estate? I think that's good news. We're already seeing rates dip a hair, right? Rates have been in the upper sixes, like hovering around 7 now for several weeks, which was better because the last time we did a podcast, they were hovering, in the mid 7s if you had great credit. So that almost a little more than a half a point, and some are having in the 6.75, so even 3/4 of a point lower than just the last time we did the podcast, which honestly is moving the needle for a lot of buyers. That it really does change their every it depends on the loan, of course, right? But we used to say for every $1,000 when the rates were low, for every $1,000 you spent more on a home, your mortgage went up by $3. So we used to joke and be like, when rates were crazy low, like, I mean, for less than a Starbucks coffee, you're going to lose this home, right? And then when rates went up, it was like, oh, well, $7 a thousand, that starts to change, right? I mean, now you're like, shoot, you can get the nicest coffee at Starbucks for so it's, it definitely moves the needle a little bit. I think that's a good sign economically for our country that I mean, the stock market responded well too, is that and as it pertains to real estate, people who want to buy are definitely going to be a little more able, and that's great. The other half of the equation is our market, is the real estate market, and that's part. Before we clicked record, I said I think folks might be reading a lot of mixed messages, more than in the last 6 months. Because every now and then you'd find one outlier article saying, the sky is falling, the market's going to poo. That was pretty rare. The housing market is going to poo. That's pretty rare. You wouldn't find that many of them. Well, now you're starting to see a lot more, and they're specifically talking about how home values are not going to climb in 2024 like they thought. Like Zillow came out midsummer, said it was going to raise to 3%. Then they changed it this fall to minimal 1% gain. And now just recently they changed it to a 1% potential decline in home values across the country. And I think, again, typical of Winston, Adam, I think that some markets are already like extremely hot still, and some markets are already seeing a decline. And our market, frankly, is in the middle. We've seen a totally flat the last 6 months or so in values. Maybe a hair up, but minimally. And I think that's probably safe that 2024, if inventory stays where it is, which is still hovering at or slightly below 2 months inventory in the average home, which in Winston is 325,000. Then that's what we'll see, probably a minimal gain in 2024, not the 10% of 2021, or even probably the 4% or 5% that we saw in 2022 and 23.
Yeah. Okay. So what you're talking about, though, is an increase or potential decrease in home value or home equity, what your home is worth.
Right.
Is there a chance people might read that headline and misinterpret what that actually means, and how so?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's incredibly misleading, because people just don't typically sit around and go, I mean, they ask what their home is worth hypothetically all the time, right? That's the common, and we bought a tech and put it on our website, total shameless plug. And we're reaching out to people all the time with something that we can edit, right? Most home bots are not editable. So
I love those emails, by the way. I love getting those emails and using that tool.
I think it's a pretty easy, useful tool. And the fact that I can edit it, right? If you say, hey, Blake, man, have you seen our value? That feels a little low, or that seems crazy high. You think we can get that? And I can go in, pull comps and adjust is cool. Yep. And I think we updated our website recently, and that's something that we pulled to the center and focus on it, because I think it's going to be a thing that sellers are always going to be curious about, but with new tech, it's easier. Now, I think it's misleading. Those headlines, the market is falling. It's misleading in the sense that we overtly, over a long period of time, we're supposed to see 4% increase. And in a 3-year period, we saw 40%. So we're going to make up for that overt climb with some flat years. But I don't see our market declining. Some markets, look, Winston went up 40%. Some markets went up 80%. So those markets might need to decline.
Yeah, they just need to stabilize.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were joking about this beforehand, because you said, well, some markets might do this, some markets might do this, and Winston will probably end up somewhere in the middle. And I kind of joked with you. I said, isn't that where Winston always is?
Yeah. Yeah. We're a little vanilla and I think most of us who live here honestly love that, or grow to love it.
It's time to get serious about your financial future. It's never too early, but it could be too late to get started. And that's oftentimes the hardest part, getting started. How much do I save? Where do I invest? Do I save for college or retirement? How much for each? And who do I talk to about it all? Okay, we'll keep things simple for now and help you answer the last one. We recommend you begin with a local financial advisor. And that's Jennifer Johnson of 3 Magnolias Financial Advisors. She'll sit down with you for a complimentary introductory consultation and go over all of your questions. Get started on the path to achieving your financial goals. Visit 3magnoliasfinancialadvisors.com or call 336-701-1600. Get comfortable with your financial future. 3 Magnolias Financial Advisors. Retirement, financial planning, and investments. Securities offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through 3 Magnolias Financial Advisors. 3 Magnolias Financial Advisors and Cetera Advisor Networks are not affiliated. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity.
So how much of this, from a national perspective, if Zillow is obviously a national company, and other analysts or people that report on these things, how much of what they project is based on markets that are so much different than what Winston is? Because we know that we talked about this in previous podcasts, that there's a lot of people migrating to our part of the country, right? And so there's people moving out of high-priced areas out west or in the Midwest or the Northeast, and they're coming to our area. And so, yeah, if maybe that's what a lot of this is based on, is the fact that there are just markets that are so volatile that it ends up making up a good chunk of what these projections are based off of. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think I'm not going to throw any, but I haven't agreed with a single national Bloomberg article written as it pertains to real estate in the last 2 years, because they're and in their defense, they have to paint with this incredibly broad brush that specifically in the last year or so, when starting last summer, they've been beating the sky is falling, stinks for young millennials or old Zers or whatever it is, right, to buy houses, and maybe you shouldn't buy. And they've been painting with a very broad brush that is a little doom and gloom, and a lot doom and gloom in some of them. And the challenge with that is, in certain markets, you might need to, maybe you should rent, but not in every market. And that's the impossibility of those of Zillow, of Bloomberg, Apple News, right? If you write an article that hits the whole country, you can't, you have to paint with a broad brush. And some cities, if you have 6 months inventory or more, your market is not at all like Winston-Salem's that has less than 2 months. I mean, you're night and day different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that where we are right now? Still less than 2 months inventory?
Still less than 2 months. And you keep thinking it's going to grow. But the challenge is, like, here we are in the holiday season. I've got several sellers who are probably going to take their home off the market. Couple will come back on. A couple might not. And that's what happens. That happens every year. So I think inventory is going to shrink for the next couple of weeks. And then what typically happens is when we get into the new year, especially if we're going to be solidly in the mid sixes in an interest rate world, I think that the consumer demand is potentially going to outpace the supply, and we're gonna even see a lowering, which will make it impossible for our home values not to go up more than that,
right?
1 to 3%.
Yeah, because we already talked about this in our previous episode, which is, yes, you have your high interest rates now, but the competition is so much lower than what it might be once we get into 2024. And here we are with another factor that we didn't even consider because we didn't know what was going to happen with interest rates yet. And here is another factor that's going to contribute to more competition once the calendar turns and once we get closer to spring, when it always picks up. So how much would you implore anybody who's looking at buying to act now?
Locally, very much so. Right. Locally, for the next 90 days, I can't even say that. For right now, 100%, it is the best time for probably in the last 3+ years to buy a home from a value perspective, because there aren't as many bidding wars. There's just not as many buyers. Now, the inventory is still low, and you're going to be underwhelmed with your supply. Come next year, I think you're going to have, January and February, you might see some uptick in supply, but I just am pretty darn confident that there's going to be a lot more buyers.
Yeah. Yeah. And because of what you're saying, where you could see interest rates fall below 7, and once they start going down, more and more people start to get in the game.
Yep.
Where do you think we're going to be when we record this podcast in January? I mean, these things don't happen overnight. And you mentioned, interest rates will go down, but you said it's going to take several quarters for it to really start to come down significantly. Where do you think things will stand when we get together for the first time in 2024?
I can already tell you that January of 2024 is going to be a better month from my business perspectively. I can already say that now than what I could tell you December of 2022. So I know January 24 is going to be better for me personally than January of 23 was. And what that means, a consumer, they don't care about me, that they should care about themselves. What that means is more people are starting to buy again now than they were a year ago. And I think that especially now that we know rates aren't going to keep going up, most people don't need the rates. Look, like, would we love those 2s and 3s again? Maybe, except that would bring a whole bunch of headaches. So no. But if 6s is, which is totally healthy, is where we're going to be interest rate wise, I think the consumers can get over that. Our market did not slow down, Adam, until we got into the mid 7s. It was, really, we were fine all the way up into the low 7s. And then once we got into the mid 7s, everybody was like, yeah, this is too much. Like, that was what it moved the needle locally. Yeah. So I guess I think a month from now when we're talking, I'm going to say, yeah, dude, we're busy.
And this is good news for people that thought to themselves, I can buy now and refinance later, because if they buy now and refinance in 6 months to a year, pretty good chance they're going to be able to do so with a much lower interest rate, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally what the Fed just said. In theory, unless they change their minds, I think that I don't know if it's worth refinancing for a half a point or 3/4 of a point. We can have that. We can bring a lender on and have that conversation.
Yeah.
I think if they lock in and buy a home today at 6.75, they might not be refinancing probably for another year or two when it gets into the mid fives, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't see us seeing fives. I could be wrong. I don't think we're going to see fives next year.
In 2024, we won't see it that low.
No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Blake, if folks are intrigued by what they've heard and they want to act now before the competition, which we think the competition will start to heat up once the weather starts to begin to heat up in early 2024, where can folks find the Ginther Group?
Find us online at our new site, theginthergroup.com, theginthergroup.com, or give us a shout at 336-283-8689, 283-8689.
And for all the times your website might get updated, we can still see your face on a billboard around town, right?
Hey, you know what? Honestly, I did give that. Funny enough, I gave that up. You won't see my mug on that billboard, but for another few more weeks.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll miss that. That is one holiday tradition that I hope sticks around for next year.
We'll see if we bring it back. My kids are totally fine with Dad not being on a billboard.
They're embarrassed by it.
At first I think Jack thought it was cool, and then he was like, "Dude, how much longer am I gonna have to look at your mug?"
I think Jack should design your next billboard.
Yeah. I mean, so he promises me that we're going to do videos. He's just been so busy.
Yeah.
But over his holiday break, we're going to shoot a few videos.
Can't wait. I can't wait to see those. All right. Well, make sure you follow the Ginther Group on Instagram and Facebook. That's where you can find Jack's videos. They're tremendous. They're on YouTube as well. They're on their YouTube channel. So, Blake, appreciate it, man. Happy holidays to you and your family. And we'll chat again at the new year.
Thanks, brother. Happy holidays.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode on the Triad Podcast Network. Our mission is simple: provide information, advice, and stories about the people and places that make the North Carolina Triad such a great place to be. You can find us by searching Triad Podcast Network on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much wherever you like to listen. If you like what you heard and want to support the show and those that contribute, we would truly appreciate a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. It helps spread the word along, as do your shares on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Triad Podcast. To get in touch with us, simply email info@triadpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.
This is the Triad Podcast Network.